All right, hey guys, we are back with another session of Real Talks. Thank you so much for joining us. This month we're doing a special edition of Real Talks where we are honoring fathers. It's the month of June, and we are talking about the special fathers in our life. We know Father's Day is coming up. And depending on when we do this, Father's Day may have already happened. But we're excited to just showcase fathers, to honor fathers, to appreciate the fathers and the father figures in our life. And today, to do that, we have a special guest that is with us. And Leticia, tell us a little bit about how you actually, connected with this person.
You're not gonna give her name when you see this.
Well, I'll let you give her name.
I love that.
You were the.
So
I'm not gonna pronounce her name.
I'm gonna let her go ahead and do it. She rolls R's, so you know.
Well, I'm not gonna say it last time, but it is our special privilege to have Beza Wheat with us today, and she's okay with us calling her Beza. So thank you for helping us. So I met Beza. It was fun. It was on Instagram, social media. Woo woo. I was on there, and her and I both follow a Enneagram page. It was the same Enneagram Instagram page, and I had made a comment on the post, and then she saw my comment and asked me, she saw that I was our relationship dynamic in our marriage is a 4 and 8 combination, and she kind of took interest to that and was like, because it's not every day you hear that there's a 4 married to an 8. If you are familiar with the Enneagram, you know that it's kind of like, wow, how do y'all make it? How have you not killed each other yet? So that was kind of what sparked our conversation. And then I started following her on Instagram because I was just curious, because I just appreciated her curiosity, quite honestly. And so then I became curious about her life and who she was. And as I started to follow her there on Instagram, I started realizing that this was a very deep soul, really. And I was just very intrigued by her being a 4. I was extremely intrigued by the fact that she just was such a open soul to the world, really. And I was like, wow, like she's so transparent. I appreciated that. And she was just so honoring of her father that it was, in today's society, babe, you and I talk a lot about the fact that we don't see enough about healthy relationships being blown up all over the place. We hear a lot about the drama on social media. Yes. We hear a lot about the it's complicated, or we hear the, whatever, all the different words that social media and the world uses today to describe basically toxic, unhealthy relationships, right? And so here you were blowing up this beautiful, healthy relationship with your dad. And I'm like, who is this person that is just always so honoring of her father and taking every opportunity to share it with other people? And that was just, to me, was striking. And I was like, I just want to know her. I don't really know where this will go, but a human like that, I want to know who this person is. And I want to know, where does this come from? So that's how I met her. And then we just kind of started messaging back and forth a little bit. I asked, if we could connect through this podcast, and asked her if we could talk. And then we started texting, and I think we both agreed in our first little conversation, we knew that, like, okay, there's potential here for a beautiful relationship to blossom. But yeah, that is actually how I met her.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
That's great. It was really awesome. So I know that we want to discuss the whole honoring of the fathers. We want to discuss not just your biological father, though, Beza, because you've shared with us that your life has been impacted actually by many individuals in your life. But the first thing we actually want to ask you before we dive into that is, who is Beza Wheat? Who is Beza?
Oh. Wow, that's a cool question. Okay, so my name is Beza Wheat. It actually means redemption.
Oh, wow.
And my dad's best friend ended up kind of like, my mom honored this man. He was one of my dad's best friends. He passed away, and they weren't like agreeing with the name. Like, my dad wanted to name me something else, my mom wanted to name me something else, and he was like, this should be her name. And they're like, okay, like, I guess that's gonna be your name. And so they like loved it. I would never let any other human name my child. So bless their heart, because I really like my name. And honestly, like I think being an 8 on the Enneagram like explains who I am in my name in a prophetic way, and like it gives me like an understanding of who I am. So I'll explain that in just a second. But I'm Ethiopian. So I was born in September 1989, and I moved to the States in 2002. I lived with my mom for about a year. And then my aunt and my uncle, who are crazy, like crazy, because I will tell you why they're crazy. They're amazing. They adopted me after being married. They got married in July, and they adopted me, quote unquote, adopted me or fostered me in September. So I like moved in with them as a troubled teenage person in 9th grade. And I'm like, who does that? So like right now I'm actually my uncle's age. And I'm like, I would not be able to deal with a teenager who has like an attitude, a sass, and just pretty much hates life. And just is like, I want my dad, my life is miserable. Like, yeah. So that's why I wanted to talk about the other father figures in my life, just because it won't make it complete without them, you know, who I am. So, and then I have a little girl. Her name is Mercy. I talk a lot about her on Instagram too, I feel like, because I mean, I'm a single parent and my life literally revolves around her. So that's kind of who I am. I love Jesus. I'm sure I love to I like to look at myself. I am a lover of Jesus who's struggling in this world to make it in this world and trying to live a holy life. But I love Jesus, and like my weak love is still like love to Jesus, and he just is still moved by it. You know what I mean? Like in the mundane and the days that I don't hang out with the Lord in quiet time, and in the days that I have like a great worship session, all of it is just like all of it matters to him. So I want to have that perspective like instilled in my head, and like I want my little girl to grow up knowing that, and like just like emotional health, mental health, and like these kind of freedoms. Like I want these things to be like my ceiling to be her floor, so she can continue to be healthier and like fight for those things. So that's kind of who I am, and like rapid fire style.
No, I think that's so good. And one of the things that jumps out to me is I think that in our society, right, when people come across people like ourselves, who have a very strong anchor of faith, oftentimes we are seen as people who don't maybe think things through, or that we ignore those parts of ourselves, the emotional part, the psychological part, and we just kind of allow faith and these other things to just overshadow or just kind of gloss over that. But it's always beautiful when we realize that self-awareness, right, is so important, not just for us, but to God. Like us being self-aware, understanding how he's made us is important to him, so that he can actually do what he needs to do through us to impact the world, you know? And so I think that's so amazing that you are teaching your daughter that, you know, as a parent, you're allowing yourself to be transparent enough so that she can see your process and learn. And like you said, that, you know, your ceiling would be her floor. That's so beautiful, because the things that we don't have, right, well, we didn't have growing up, we're now able to give to our kids so they have a head start. And so that is so amazing. And on that note of giving our kids a head start, I do want to transition to the father piece, because in your conversations with Leticia and just things that we talked about, I thought it was very beautiful that you brought out not only the honor of your biological father, but the people in your life who have been, you mentioned your uncle there. It was your uncle, right? It was that, that have been strong father figures in your life, and so forth. And so the first question I want to ask you as far as the fathers is, you know, what do you think makes those relationships healthy right now? How would you describe, like, if you were to think of your relationship with your biological father, your relationship with your uncle, who has been this father figure, and anyone else in your life that you felt like that, like, what do you think actually helps those relationships to be healthy?
Okay, so I like want to focus on it. Like, I want to talk about my dad first, and just like kind of focus on him, and like why I think our relationship is pretty healthy. So we talked kind of a lot about the Enneagram. I don't know what my dad's Enneagram is, and I don't think he'll ever tell me because he doesn't really care to figure it out. He's like, I'm 80 years old. I'm not going to go take your test. I'm not going to read your books. But I know, I'm like, Dad, like, this is how we need to relate moving forward. I need to know your number. Like, what is going on? He's not going to do it. But I honestly believe, I mean, I do diagnose people that I love in my own mind of what they are. But whatever number he is, it doesn't even matter, because it's like, as a daughter, I always knew my dad pursued my heart. So like, I always knew that there was like a very thin wall between us. So his whole thing is like, hey, like, you have a problem, you come to me. Like, you don't understand something, you come to me. And my dad actually, like, kind of like, to give you an explanation about my dad, he was a civil engineer, so he traveled a lot for work actually. So there were moments of my life that he was gone for like 6 weeks, and he would be back only for holiday seasons or like for a week break. But when my dad was home, and maybe it's because like social media didn't exist or technology didn't exist, and I think sometimes technology it robs joy of parenting, and it robs joy from our families. So like, truly, when my dad was around, like, yeah, his technology was listening to BBC and CNN in the morning and like watching the news before bedtime. But besides that, he like was there. He was just like in your face, like they're hanging out, they're resting, just there. So we always had dates. Like when he came, like we would go to this beautiful restaurant. Like, it's not even beautiful. Like, I would still get the same sandwich, but it was like our time together to like process like my thing. And like I kind of like, even like looking back as a child, it's like, you know, like, so my sister lived there, and then we had another, you know, she worked for our family, but then she's like a family. She's like a mom to me too, you know? So I don't like saying she worked for our family. She's part of our family. So those two lived with us, but it would be like, Dad, they did this to me. They did this to me. Like, so it's just like, it would be like complaint list, like compiled, like ready to like talk through that with him. Like, I remember doing this as a 10-year-old, and like my dad, like just like listening to all of it and acknowledging, and him just like looking at them, and it's like, I parent my kid. Like, you guys cannot parent her. And so like, they just knew not to like corporal punishment wasn't like our family tradition. Like, I just like, so then I just grew up with this like thing of like, I go to my dad. Like, so it's just like, I count, like, I remember like the days that he would come, like he would be like, yep, I'll be there around this time. And it's like, sure enough, that clock time would click and he would just be there, and I would just like run and just give my dad a kiss. And like, I still remember that. And like, I remember the sound of the truck that pulls into our neighborhood, because it's just like, you know, it's just loud. And when he would leave, like we talked about this too, and when he would leave, I would just like cry. And my dad, like, and I've confronted my dad about this, so it's okay that I share this. But like, for so long, it was so hard to cry with Jesus. And part of it was like, my dad would be like, it's sinful. He's like, I like go to work to provide for you. Like, he goes, you live in this beautiful house, you go to this beautiful school. Like, all of this happens because I work really hard. So he took like his work very seriously, right? And he goes, when you are crying about that, it's sinful, it's wrong. And I just like remember being like, I can't cry in front of God. I can't cry around God. And I remember just like reading Psalm 56:8, and like God, like David or whoever wrote that, saying he collects he collects our tears in a bottle, and just weeping over that. And like, so now like when I cry, like if I'm having a moment, I'm like, do not give me a napkin. Like, all my tears are going in a bottle. All my tears have emotions. Leticia is like, yeah, girl, you're like, I'm like speaking your language, I feel like, right now.
You absolutely are. I'm so happy for you as an 8 who discovered that, because it's resonating with us, because I've had to watch him walk a similar journey with accepting his emotions and allowing himself to express them, because he had similar messages that he received as a child about not being able to express his emotions. So I'm just like, God, I'm so happy for you that you were able to get that revelation for yourself, especially with the wiring of an 8. That's awesome.
That's so good.
Yeah, and you guys, like, I want to say this, like, I don't like staying there too long. It happens like I would say like, I would have like a good crying moment, maybe like 5 times a year. but it's like, it's bad. Like, it's like puffed eyes, like, and it would just be like, it's real bad. It's like not even, I can't even like tell you it's great. Like sometimes my daughter, like my daughter has seen me like a couple of times. She's like, Mommy, are you okay? And she would just like rub my hand. It's not anybody's fault. It's just life, you know? And I don't ever, and when she's like crying, and I'm like, cry, like, go ahead, go for it. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't say stop. Like, I mean, I'm sure I do because my 8 in me is just like, just get to the next thing. Why are you crying? This is a waste of my time. And then she's like, I need to dial it down. You know, I need to dial it down and let her, because it's just like, it's true. Like, tears are therapeutic. So anyways, so besides that, I honestly feel like my dad was great. Like with the knowledge that he had, he showed up. He showed up and being a dad on a consistent basis. And like, he came to my high school graduation from Ethiopia. It was like, so sweet. Like my cousin kind of sponsored part of the trip. He stayed with my cousin and he invited his nephew, like who he's very close with. And then like took me to New York, DC, like he wanted to like do fun things. Like he's just like a reader. So he was just like, he knew where he wanted to do, like he like planned it all out. Like he planned it all out. And I was like, okay, like great, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And he's just a very like, I don't know, like, and I think like seeing him as a grandpa just makes me love him even more, because the way he interacts with my little girl is just so sweet, you know, like his like, I don't want to say they have a language barrier because he does speak English, but sometimes he can't hear everything that she's saying. So he goes, what is she saying? And this one day she's like, she's 3 or 2 at the time. I think she must have been 3. She's like, Grandpa Lamayo loves me more than you. He like overheard her. This is my favorite. He overheard her. And he was like, excuse me? He was like, that's impossible. I don't know you. Like, I know your mom. And a lot of people are like, that is brutally wrong for a grandpa to say that. He's like, but I don't want to lie to her. Like, why would she think that? Why would she think that crazy? But yeah, like, so they have a sweet relationship. She's just like, and I'm like, let's just pray for Grandpa Lamayo's health. And she's like, Mommy, because he's turning 80 this year. She's like, I want him to live 112 years. I'm like, yes, those are both players. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just love it. She's like, I want him to live 112 years. I'm like, come on, you know. It's so sweet to see their friendship. Yeah. So anyways.
What stood out to me, you said that he showed up.
Yeah.
Your dad showed up. And that to me is like, I think that you stated that he was this was a single dad that was raising you. That he was not only just a single dad, but he was a traveling working dad. And I think that often when we hear just the one alone, if we were to hear the phrase single dad, we would say, oh man, that relationship must have been tough raising the girls.
Yeah.
That right there. Then you said he was a traveling working dad.
Yeah.
And then you said he showed up. Those 3 phrases are not often spoken in that type of relationship dynamic. And I feel like when the question that we asked you was, why did you think it was so healthy? What struck me is that you said that he showed up. And I'm like, wow. I think that sometimes we forget the simplicity. And we've talked about this before, because we've had seasons where he's had to be gone for work a lot and it was tough. And we've had the conversations and he's had to help me with this. And he's helped me to say, babe, what does it look like for me that when I am home, I make it count?
Yeah, it's good.
That's what I hear you're saying about your dad, is that your father realized that yes, he was gone a lot. Yes, he was a single dad, but he realized as a man and as a father that when he is there, he has to make it count.
Yeah.
And so, and I do love what you're saying about the technology, because I think it's something that our dads in today's world do have to wrestle that tension. And we have those honest conversations here. There's times where he's, I've said to him, I'm like, I don't want to see the freaking back of that computer screen anymore. I mean, you're a really good looking man and I'd like to see your face. I'm tired of seeing the computer screen.
That's funny.
You know what I mean? And
yeah, that's good.
I had to have those hard conversations because even the children sometimes have said, my daughter, which we have two beautiful girls, and my daughter who's currently home. Our other daughter's in college, but our daughter who's home, she'll say, Mommy, I want to ask Daddy a question, but I don't know if I'm allowed because he's behind the computer.
Right.
And so she has received this message that if Daddy's behind a computer screen, he's working, so she can't interrupt.
Yeah.
You know, so
Right.
we
Mm-hmm.
those conversations here in our home, as well as what to remind her. And I've had to, and he does this really well, but my daughter just still kind of shies away. But we've had to constantly remind her, baby girl, you're more important to Daddy than anything that is on that computer screen. It doesn't matter. So you have full reign to go and interrupt Dad. And she's also, we believe in 8. And so she's just very, she's very honoring of like an understanding that work is important. And so we have to kind of, but I love that you said that he showed up. I feel like the question that was asked was, why do you feel that it was a healthy relationship with your dad? And the bottom line is, we have to show up. If we want healthy relationships, we have to flip and show up. And I mean, showing up looks so many different ways. And I love that your dad obviously seems like a very honest man. You said that with Mercy, when she said, you know, oh, he loves me more than you. I love that your dad said what he said to her, that how could I possibly love you more? I don't really even know you that well. I know your mom more. But I love that, because I think even that, how possible for Mercy to see a person, a grandpa, nonetheless, that is willing to be so honest with her at such an early age. Like, listen, I hope we're in a relationship for a long time, because I can't wait to see what Mercy turns out in like 15 years. This woman is going to be like, watch out, world, here I come. Because the love that y'all
seriously,
her, the truth that you're pouring into her, the honesty. I love it. I love that so much. So thank you so much for sharing that. What do you think, Beza, is it that drives you to honor your dad publicly the way that you do, knowing that he may never see it? And what I mean is, you mentioned to me that, right, like, he doesn't do social media, right? He doesn't really, we talk about technology. He doesn't, you just said that. He's not a technology man. So even that, he's not a technology guy. We just talked about that. He's never going to see all these amazing posts that you put on social media about him and the way you blow him up. So what is it in you that still drives you to still honor him this way so publicly? Like, what is that? Why do you choose to do that?
I don't know. I wonder if it's like, honestly, I don't have an answer to that. So we're just going to process this, because hello, I'm a verbal
that's what we do. Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. I think just like not having my dad live here and like truly having part of my heart there in Ethiopia is like a way of coping, right? So it's truly a way of coping. Like I don't even want to like say this to you. Like, I mean, I do write my dad like lots of letters. Even when I moved here, I was actually just telling my spiritual mom this the other day. She kind of made a comment, like, her husband, I consider one of my spiritual fathers too. I was kind of, it was a joke, but it was true. I was like, your iMessage works now. Like, when we're sending text back, it's blue. And he was like, oh, cool. Yeah, great. Like, I was like, no, it matters. And because when they're out of the country, I won't be able to get to them. And then it like festered this wound up. Like, there were times back in the days, like, I couldn't get a hold of my dad. Like, I would call his assistant, who will radio my dad, and my dad would drive to have a conversation with me. That was my reality growing up. So like, being able to get a hold of my people is very important to me. So like, right now I can call my dad anytime, like, and I can get a hold of him, because technology in Ethiopia has changed drastically in the last 20 years, right? And so when I moved here, it was like, and I lived with my mom, so she just kind of like, she couldn't, like, wasn't gonna like have me talk to my dad about random stuff every single day. So I had like a budget of like calling my dad with a calling card, $5 a week or whatever it was, which is not a lot. It's like 20 minutes. So then I created an email. My dad never had an email. My dad created an email so I can like type my dad an email out whenever I want. It was like an outlet that they just gave me. Like, that was an affordable outlet for everyone, right? And this is dial-up time in 2002. So then fast forward to now, my dad has, and now I know this, my dad has printed each email out and he's filed them. And it's like, and I send an email when I'm in pain. So it's like, I'm like, oh, I should like read some of those emails as a 13-year-old, what was going through my mind and why I wrote that, and actually sit with that emotion. I don't know if I could ever do that, to be honest, but it's like, and then he would just be like, and he's like, I always keep it kiss, keep it simple and short. Like, and so his email would be like, I love you, sounds good. And I had to like, I also teach my dad like email etiquette. I'm like, I don't work for you. Like, you can't tell me, go ahead. So I'm like, I'm your freaking daughter. Like, show some emotion. I was like, I'm like, I will type out an email for you to write out and to tell me that you love me. Like, it's very easy. So like, he's learned to do that, because it would be like, sounds great. What sounds great? Like, I sent you 5 pages and you're gonna come up with sounds great after that? Sounds great? Like, really?
Sounds great.
Anyway, sounds great. Sounds good. Oh yeah. Like, and I'm glad they didn't have thumbs up. Can you imagine if he sent me thumbs up? I probably would go crazy.
You'd have 17 thumbs up.
Which one? Literally though. Like, no, it's like different points. So So anyways, so why do I honor my dad so much in public?
Yes.
It's just, I mean, like, if you see my and honestly too, like, my dad was a single parent, like, and he did a phenomenal job with what he had. They didn't have parenting classes, they didn't have podcasts, they didn't have any of it. Single parenting wasn't even a thing, you know? And so for him to like, for me to like, I always say this, like, about love. I think of like my daughter's heart as a bucket or something. And I go, I believe this, and I will say this over and over. I believe God created both moms and dads to fill the love tank of their children's hearts. Mm-hmm. However, if we don't have that, I don't want to have the woe is me crisis and anger and jealousy over my married friends who have healthy husbands. Mm-hmm. Rather, I could cash on and bank on that. Like I can't play rough with my daughter. I just don't like it. It doesn't bring me joy. None of that just brings me joy. Whereas like her godfather, who's phenomenal, he could like tickle her, he could throw her up in the air. My friends' husbands, they could do all of that. You know what I'm trying to say? But that is showing love. That is showing healthy men in her life. My dad is 80 years old. He can't do that. Whereas her other grandpa, he can like sit down and be like, oh, sit on my lap and talk to me about whatever. But this other grandpa is a grandpa because of adoption too. Yes. You know what I mean? And so, so like spiritual fathers who end up becoming grandpas, you know what I mean? Yeah, so good. I don't know. I feel like I'm all over the place a little bit, but it makes sense in my head.
I love that, like that you're touching on that, right? Like the intentionality of that you exercise to make sure that your daughter has these health, and yourself, you have healthy male relationships in your life as a single mother raising a young daughter. Is that something, Beza, that came to you like, oh yes, like this is an intentional thing? Did you see it modeled in other single mothers who were doing it? How did you get the thought to say, man, or did it just happen one day that you had this spiritual, I know you talked about already, it was part of your own upbringing, your uncle raised you, right? Like along with your dad, your uncle and your aunt took you in. What do you think was the catalyst for you having all of these healthy male relationships in your life? Is it that someone modeled it? Is it that because of your own uncle coming into your life that you decided to have all these other healthy male relationships? And I even love what you're saying about cashing in on that. I love that that's your perspective about having these because I appreciate your honesty about realizing that yes, you're a single mom and you could have taken the perspective of, oh, I'm jealous of that woman in her healthy relationship with her husband. That's not an uncommon story. That's very common. Right. But instead, you chose to write a new narrative, and your narrative was, wait a minute, I don't need to be jealous of that. I can actually take advantage of that. Like you're thinking,
great. It's great life.
The way you think is not normal is what I'm trying to get at. So why do you think that you kind of had this perspective to say, hey, yeah, I can cash in on this for me and my daughter, and I don't have to rob that family? Because let's be honest, Beza, I mean, we know of people in stories where the jealousy got to the point where the woman decided to have an affair with the husband. Like that's the normal story, right? That's common because we are craving something that we don't personally have. And so we do the unhealthy thing and we then go rob it from somebody else. But instead, you as a single woman with this little girl have decided, you know what? Okay, yes, I see that I have a gap here and I have a need for this, but that's not mine. And however, though, I can have a healthy relationship. I would assume you had healthy conversations with these individuals and these couples to say, could we have this relationship dynamic? Would you be willing to invest into my daughter's life? Would you be willing to invest into my life? Like, I don't know how it all happened, but I'm curious, how did these relationships, these surrogate relationships in your life, how did they form? How did they come about?
So, I knew I was going to be a single parent like 6 weeks into when I was pregnant, right? So, my uncle and my aunt, and then being a godparent in the Ethiopian culture is a huge deal. So when you're a godparent, okay, so I'm going to talk to, so right now you're like, oh, where's your daughter? We don't hear her. Yes, you don't. You definitely don't hear her because she's with her godfather. And honestly, like seriously, you guys, he's amazing. His name is Charlie. So my uncle's cousin, Talile, is married to Charlie, right? So Talile and I lived with my aunt and my uncle. So my aunt and my uncle were not that crazy. They're actually very crazy. So they're married 2 months into their marriage. They have me. No, you guys, I need to paint a picture of their life because they're so generous. When I say they're crazy, I'm not saying they're crazy. I'm just like, they're just so selfless. They're just so, I tell my aunt this, I was like, how did you do it? How did you do it? And she's like, that was so joyous. And I mean, and I guilt them in. I'm like, now they have 2 kids. I'm like, do you know your great parents? I'm like, that's because you practiced on me, So I like tell their kids, their daughter is my goddaughter. So I always tell her, I'm like, your parents are great because they made all the mistakes that they needed to with me. And so now you guys think that they're great parents. They weren't. They were not great parents. So I just recite. Yeah. And then they actually were, I mean, for being 31 and 27, they did a phenomenal job. Like my uncle, and here's the thing, like Ethiopians are so sometimes, quote unquote, 3s and 5s on the Enneagram, so driven with school, so driven with success. So it's like, my uncle had a rule for me. I couldn't come after 10 p.m. Meaning, and we couldn't have sleepovers. I never could sleep over anywhere, but people could sleep at our house. So it was just like things that I know. Like, so now my goddaughter, who's 10, she's just like, and my aunt is like, yeah, that's what we did with Ade. Like, that's what we did with Beza, and that's what we're gonna do with you. Like, that's just gonna be your life. Sucks to be you. Like, we don't do sleepovers, but people can come to our house. And so it's just like, but I'm so glad they did that, right? And then their whole thing is like, oh, you have to get a certain kind of GPA to have fun. So then I was driven, quote unquote, in school because it's like, well, and my uncle never missed my parents' teacher conference till I was a senior. Because when I was a senior, I started going to college, but he showed up to all of them. And he'd be like, how can I help her? What does she need help with? And he was, again, 33, 34, like showing up for a teenager without having a child and all of that stuff, and working a full-time job and being newly married. Like, that was just like, he was like, oh, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. So they were amazing. So I didn't want to give my daughter to them as godparents because I already have a relationship with them that is so intimate. So I wanted to honor Talile's husband. Talile was like a sister to me when I lived in their home. She lived with us too. So she got married in 2006. So she lived with me for 3 years when I was there, almost 4 actually. So then I asked her husband to be a godfather, and I kid you not, it was like a list of things that he had to do. I was like, can you do any of that? Like, and I'm being very serious. It was like, I made a list of all things, and I was like, can you do these things? And he was like, even if I wasn't a godfather, it's not about a title for me. Of course I would do this for your daughter. And he's been doing that very consistently and on a regular basis. I see like my divorced parents wrangling their ex-husbands or their people that they're separated with to be with their children. Like, we're moving to Georgia right now, and he's like texting me since, he's like, can you just leave Mercy here with me? I'll raise her. Like, it's gonna be really hard. I'm gonna miss her. He's just that kind of a godfather. So that's how the godfather, like Charlie, kind of came into the picture. And he's amazing. Like, I mean, he takes way better care of her than she has more fun with him than me. So I'm like, wow, this is great. So he has her today till I dropped her off yesterday at 9. I think he's bringing her over to like my friend's house at like 7.
Wow.
But like, even then she could have a second sleepover and it wouldn't change. Like, he just loves her, and they just love one another. And I pray that one day, like, the way I honor my dad would be the way she honors him, because he has truly showed up for her, you know?
Wow.
That's so amazing.
I wonder then, I hear you speaking of the Ethiopian culture. Is it your culture then that has played such a beautiful role in the modeling of the importance of community and relationship? It sounds like to me as I'm listening to you, or like you talked about your father, even when he was gone, but the sisters were there. Like, is this something in the Ethiopian culture where there's this just beautiful modeling of the importance of kind of, it takes a village literally to raise children? Or
I would say yes and no. Yes, a lot of it, yes. However, I think being the kind of person that I am, and also like we were talking about my married friends, right? So like, I went to college with these 3 girls, and their husbands are in my life. Actually, like, let's just say, and then I lived with 9 girls when I was in college. I just feel like if it's not work related, if I'm texting your husband, you should be in it. So I would text. So I have a family thread for my friends. So right. So if I'm texting them one-on-one text about like I'm doing a project for them and they're paying me, then it would be like a one-on-one text that the wife doesn't need to get. But if it's like how much Mercy loves them, or how much if it's anything emotional, I always text on that thread, because I want the person to feel honored, and I want the wife to be like, oh my gosh, my husband is amazing. Thank you for honoring my husband. Rather, oh, you honor my husband behind my back. And for that, I don't want to give any room of that, right? And maybe part of it is whatever. So like, my daughter has like these friends that like, so my friend Chet like would watch her on a Sunday like for 4 to 5 hours. So his wife and I could go to like lunch or go shopping or whatever. Like, he's done that, but it's not a big deal. Like, he's a trusted person. Like, my friend Micah is like so precious with Mercy. Like, he plays with her and his 3 kids. Not a big deal. My friend Mercy has this interesting relationship with my friend Eric, where they leave each other voice messages, like truly voice messages. Imagine like being a CFO of a company and leaving a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old a voice message on marshmallows and Oreos. And she loves him so much, she colors him pictures, and it's just like, but she knows that's not her dad, like, right? So it's not like, I need you to be my dad thing. It's just like, Eric is just like a fun person. And like, she has like, I just sparked a new friendship with my other friends too. So, and like my friend Jason last week watched Mercy for 3 hours before I flew. So so his wife and I can have a one-on-one conversation without our kids needing us. So it's like, I do these things to build my friendship with my girlfriends, and it's not a big deal for a guy who has 4 kids to have a 5th child. It's actually easier, to be honest. It's easier for me to watch 4 children than Mercy by herself, because then I'm not entertaining her. I'm managing their entertainment. Whereas like, if I'm watching Mercy by herself, like if I'm hanging out with Mercy by herself, I'm her best friend, I'm her playmate, I'm everything. Whereas if she's hanging out with like another 6-year-old, I'm like managing that they're okay and that they're not saying weird things, because my daughter says a lot of weird things that she needs to be prayed for. But like, but she's also 5, right? So so just having those 2, but these people that I just mentioned are not like Ethiopians. They're Caucasians. And then this is another thing that I do. I should tell you this. It's like a best thing. If you're a single parent and listening to this is amazing. Find married friends who are healthy and tell them you'll babysit their children for them. So I tell my friends that I'm going to come over. Oh, it's a great life. It's a great life. I will tell you. So Micah and Lizzie, when they used to live like near here, I would be like, I would love to watch your children. They're like, what do you want for dinner? So I would like tell them what I want for dinner. And then they would feed their kids.
So good. That's so smart.
That's good.
No.
So good.
No, this is like capitalism 101. So then I would like watch. I would watch their kids. They would feed us, and then they would go on a date. They would come back, and the kids and I are watching. Bigger kids and I and Mercy are watching a movie. But truly, I always fall asleep. So the bigger kids watch a movie by themselves. I monitor it, like I manage that. And then when they're up, I get my second win and hang out with my friends for half an hour. I sleep at their house. It's a great life. Eat their food the next morning. Awesome. It's amazing. Or like, I have to like, it's amazing. Like, and that's the thing. It's like, I don't want to covet like, because as an 8, our deadly sin is lust. It's like not wanting something that you don't have, but rather it's like, I want to honor what I don't have in my friends, and I want to be, and like, I showed up at their wedding. When you show up at somebody's wedding, you get to like intercede for them. You get to like help them be their best version. Like you want them to like be their best version of who they are for their marriage, right? So then it's like, well, if that's what's gonna take, and they, you know, like for me to watch their kid and go to their house, it doesn't cost me anything. I really don't have a plan this Friday night. I truly don't. Yeah. I was gonna go to bed. I can go to bed at your house. Like, so, and you're making me breakfast in the morning too. This is a great day. Like, you know, amen. Like, I will like schedule me on a weekly basis, you know. So anyways,
so that's good.
Kind of that. I love hearing about that because, again, you know, we talk about just our society now, and so many people, we don't take the time, we don't make the investment, take the time to actually develop these type of healthy, trusting relationships. I think sometimes we see so much of the negative, like all the craziness that happens, and so we get a little fearful, and then we kind of do this thing where we're just like, no, I'm just going to protect mine, and I'm not going to let anybody, you know, and we actually miss out on the opportunities to actually be wise about how we approach these things. Really, again, it goes back to self-awareness and relationship awareness, to realize, okay, if I see red flags in someone, then of course I'm going to back away and go, no, that's not right. But if I know that there's trust being built and there's relationship being built, then yeah, I need to take advantage of that they may be able to invest that I don't have, and then find out what can I invest in them. And so that there's this mutual
for sure
going on, you know, and everybody wins that way.